Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 68 of ZK Live. Tonight we have Jonas from Superstrata, NYC. Hello, sir.
Hey, Zach.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
On here.
This is great. Yeah. Exciting. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. For people who don't know you, who are you and what do you do?
All right. My name is Jonas Everett. I am the founder of a company called Superstrata. We represent and manage artisans in the interior design industry. So we primarily, our goal is to support artisans in the work that they do. So we use our relationships with designers to bring them projects and get them work, and we help them manage those projects, and we help them in the collaborative relationship, and it's and then repeat and do it. We try to do it over and over and over, and just help. I really am passionate about helping artisans build their careers and be able to focus on the work that they enjoy doing and that they are, trained and skilled at, and not have to worry about dealing with as much of the sales and marketing and the back and forth that can happen on many of these projects.
That's a very unique business model.
As far as I know, I'm the only one. There are people who are representing artisans who make furniture and things like that. But I think that's a very different animal. I think we're the only ones doing this where the work primarily is happening on a job site. So we are predominantly ornamental and architectural plaster, decorative plaster finishes, paint finishes, faux finishing, decorative painting, gilding, murals. We've done custom fabrics. We can do custom wallpapers. We've done église, glass, and we're always looking to expand into new areas.
Cool.
Yeah.
We do only the high gloss is the only thing that we overlap with. I stay away from decorative plastic and the faux finishes.
Yeah, they're challenging, but I'm lucky to have some extremely talented people who want to focus on doing what they're good at, and they see that I bring them value. And it's not for everybody. There are companies out there that they manage just fine, but it's usually it's usually once you've gotten to a certain size that you don't need help, and it's the companies that are smaller, or the artisans that are 1, 2, 3 person shops, or but I've taken some of these companies from 1 and 2 person operations to times now where they're managing 20 people on 2 or 3 different jobs simultaneously, and that's very rewarding for me to be able to see that arc that I've been able to create for somebody's career.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Like NYC Decorative Arts is a great example, and Patrick Shoemaker is an extremely talented artisan, but he was a very small shop when we first got together. And I saw his talent, and I saw his potential, and I knew how to get him in front of the right people.
So let's start at the beginning then.
Yeah.
How did you get into this industry?
I started in this industry as an artisan. I was doing decorative plaster finishes, and I think that is something that's really an important piece of my skill set, is that I have that background and that understanding and appreciation of what it's like to be an artisan and up there on a ladder and working with these materials that can be quite fussy at times. my background prior to that was in fine arts. I was actually an abstract painter. And I guess somewhere in my brain, I still think of myself, I still think I am, although I'm not doing any of it. But yeah, I started my business in 2003 and transitioned in around 2009 to working with other shops. And then that inspired me to instead of, I was subcontracting to some other shops, and I decided that I wanted to be able to put the shops that I was working with, put their name on it and really help them, and not just have it be a subcontract relationship where nobody knew who would, it didn't matter who was doing it. So now I get to share in the limelight and help to build other people's careers. Yeah, it's amazing. It's really amazing. I was pretty terrified when I first did it, because I thought, is this whole thing could just blow up on me. I'm going to suddenly peel the cover back and everyone's going to see, how the sausage gets made, and maybe they're just going to all say, I'm not interested. And it was really the opposite. The clients that I had didn't mind at all. They didn't flinch. They knew that they wanted me, and they knew that they could trust me to bring in the right people. And then more and more artisans came to me, and they wanted to do more of that with me. And I've also sought people out, because I like to seek people out, especially if there's something that I'm interested in that I'm not doing that I want to do. I want to have that be a part of my experience also. I have a great Eglise artisan that I've worked with a number of times, and she's about to come on board, Lisa Stimson. She's very talented, but that's something that I've done a little bit of, but I've been eager to expand on that. So we've known each other for a number of years, and we're going to start working together soon.
That's cool. I think it takes like the blue ocean mindset of, there's plenty of work out there. I know I'm going to add value. I think a lot of times contractors can be very like guarded and afraid of the world, and think it's a zero-sum game. And if I do work with you, then I'm going to hurt because you're getting something. Or in your case, I would imagine there was probably I would have been worried about, okay, I bring in a decorative artist to this project for this designer. Next time they're just going to go right to the decorative artist. And yeah. I think a lot of people might think that. But we spoke before, and I like your mindset about the win-win-win.
Absolutely.
So how does that work?
Well, so it's just to even expand on that. It's more than just that win-win-win. In my mind, it's that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That where we are, and I've often said this to many artisans, that often when I'm approaching someone and encouraging them to come on board, I say it's a rising tide that floats all boats. When you come on board, you're adding value, and that value becomes infectious for the rest of us, because we can now plug you into a project, or I can market you, and somebody who might not have had a need for any of the other artisans I was working with suddenly sees what I expose you to them, and they get attracted to us. And suddenly then they realize, oh, maybe I do want to do these other things. And so we really can just ratchet everything up, and on some level, it works like a collective where we're all helping each other out. And many times my projects will involve multiple trades working one after the next. And those are my favorite. When my teams are collaborating with each other, is really exciting. But back to your point is, yeah, it's a legitimate concern, right? I don't want to spend money, time, and resources marketing somebody, then only have them suddenly, go work for one of my clients or something like that. And but I'm very careful about the artisans that I bring on board, and I only bring on people that I trust. And because I bring on somebody who, performs poorly on a project, that hurts all of us, right? I can't afford that. I have to have people who are, stand by their work, stand by their word, have a lot of integrity, a lot of strong work ethic. All of that stuff is really important. So I'm very picky about who I'll bring on board, because I have to be. I can't afford, and anything I do for myself, I'm doing to everybody else. Just like the opposite is true. If I bring in somebody great, it helps everybody.
Yeah, you're only as good as your weakest.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So so the designers like it then because they're dealing with one point person.
Right. Yep. So, these design offices and architecture firms and GCs, they have limited resources as well. And if they have to chase around, an artisan or two or three, that uses a lot of their energy. And so that they know that I'm doing the chasing. And I do, artisans are artisans, not all of them are, that are ready to answer an email within, whatever the time window you want. But so I'm not afraid to follow an email up with a text message or a phone call, or because we got to get done. We have to answer to these people. So they really appreciate that. I think also, I've been in the industry now for, almost 20 years. So I bring a lot of design experience, and also my background in fine arts, I think, is very helpful. My understanding of materials and processes is very helpful. One of the things I pride myself on is being able to decipher the words that come out of a designer's mouth and translate that into how an artisan thinks, right? They think about materials and processes, and interpret. Okay, so that means we do X, Y, then Z, or we do X, Y, and then we do 1, 2, or whatever it is. We had a case like that yesterday. We had 2 hours of phone call or Zoom calls covering samples and working on the next round of samples, and there's a lot of back and forth, and that's I think I bring a lot of value there as well.
Yeah, this can be incredibly time consuming. It can be frustrating. Let's talk about samples.
Yeah. Samples are incredibly important. Let's talk about samples. And the sampling process is everything to me. You have to have an approved, you want to have an approved sample. And I always tell people it's an iterative process. If we get there on the first try, that's probably just pure luck. This really should take a few steps. There should be some back and forth. We give you something, and then you can respond to it, and then something concrete that you can respond to. Because images are images, words are words, but something you can look at, see, and touch makes a big difference.
So a designer comes to like, I have this idea for this living room ceiling.
Yeah.
And and they start describing it, and then you're like, okay, well, we can get out of this type of plaster with this type of blah blah blah, and you go back and forth with them until you get to a point where you make the first sample. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah. And so we'll often start with a talk. We'll just, we might look at images. We'll talk about materials. We'll talk about texture, sheen, all those materials. What are there materials that they're not interested in having in their space? Are there there materials that they are? Some people are very focused on using, natural materials, especially if they're interested in plaster. Yeah, and then and then when you get into the architectural plaster, you add that layer, like you mentioned ceiling. We did a ceiling about a year and a half ago, polished Venetian plaster ceiling. Very challenging thing to do. As you know, any high gloss on a ceiling is potentially nightmarish. So we needed to make sure that it was a perfectly leveled finish. At the time, I had a painting contractor that I was working with, and they did all the leveling for us. But we also had a knife edge light trough all the way the perimeter of the entire room, and we had Tadlac wall finish coming up the walls. So we had to do all the sequencing. When are we doing the Tadlac? When are we installing the knife edge? When is the ceiling getting leveled? When is the Venetian going up versus the Tadlac? We want the Tadlac to go up into the light trough so you can never see its termination point. We want the light coming out of the light trough in a way that you're never going to see the reflection of a light bulb, things like that. And by the way, we had the designer saying, you have to finish this in 2 weeks. Yeah, I mean, it gets hairy, but it's fun.
So how do you charge for samples?
So I encourage artisans not to charge for samples. A lot of people have issues with samples. Samples can be problematic. I'm sure everyone who's an artisan who's watching right now has probably had somebody else's sample handed to them at some point and asked to duplicate it, at least in some sense, right? So we all get a little nervous about handing samples out because we don't know where they're going to end up, and they're costly and time consuming to make. So when we're just getting to know a designer, and we go in and we do, maybe we kind of pitch ourselves to them, and we said, these are all the things we offer. I like to encourage the artisans to let those samples go and live in that office. Even if there's the risk of them migrating into someone else's hands. I always say that, if that designer has none of your samples, you're going to get no work from that. If you have all your samples, if they have a bunch of your samples, some of those samples might go to other places, but some of them are going to get work for you if they're good samples. And being that they're an artisan that I've selected, I know they're going to be good samples. So it's you just have to kind of bite the bullet and just do it. And then if a designer comes to us and says, will you make me, if somebody says that, will you make me 20 samples? I know that there's that red flag right off the bat, right? Why do you need, you say you have a project, why do you need 20 samples? You don't. But if I don't encourage the artisans to charge for samples, because I think we can extend some goodwill, we can show that we're part of the team. We'll just provide them with the samples that they need, and let's make sure we follow up, and we'll make the next round, and we'll go from there, and we'll win this job. I'm always working and keeping track of what designers do I need to follow up with. I'm very eager to get my team's work and the jobs that are out there.
So that's good for me. I'm glad that we're saying that, because oftentimes we paint samples. That's fairly easy. We say to a client project, like, all right, we're doing this project, X number of samples are included. If you want to see 70 colors of paint, you got to start after 7 or whatever. But the decorative world, I've been working with the designer, and they kept asking for samples and more samples, and I was like happy. I started to get like, this is a lot now. Now I've provided a lot, and
sure,
it started to be like, what the heck?
Yeah,
I haven't even bid this project yet.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think that you're right. If we're good and we're providing samples in a timely manner, and everything is going well, I should be more than happy to spend some time up front investing in the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. And right, there's always going to be someone out there somewhere who's going to take advantage of you, right? But that's the minority, right? And if you create a barrier to entry for everybody just to ward off that one bad apple, it's not going to work for you. It's better to be the giving, generous person, and if somebody takes advantage of, it's like shame on them, and you move on.
That is great. I think that it just see the world as a good, like, if you're good,
Yeah.
your side, put your stuff out there, and it'll all work out.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I mean, when I was young and starting out, I was very anxious about a lot of things, right? And I've seen a lot of young artisans make mistakes that reminded me of myself, you're not getting paid on time for something and you get really, stressed and angsty about it. It's just unfortunate, but I've been burned very, 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 very few times in this business. And I've learned that you just got to be patient. And it's a different story, much more established. We have a portfolio. I mean, anybody who's going to my we have a new website coming up soon, so that's going to be much better. But anybody goes to our Instagram account, they can see, right? We've got these teams and Superstrata. We have the chops. We can get their project done. So I'm able to have that level of confidence where I can, give out samples and things like that. Whereas I understand with a younger artisan, where you feel like you might be getting taken advantage of because you're not as established. But I think you should just be generous, do what you can to be helpful to the people who are asking to work with you, really.
Well, I have a phone call to make tomorrow and some crow to eat. No, I got most of them out. There's been two that took me a while, and I'm going to change that mindset and be more giving with the samples.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. It's hard I think especially with painting, right? I think it's a little more, it could probably be a little more intimidating when giving out paint samples, where you might feel like, they might just be taking these and they're going to hand them to someone else who won't give them the quality that you're going to give them, but maybe that person doesn't recognize the difference in the quality. Go ahead.
And combined with some metal samples. And so samples ourselves, we were more than happy to. We did a bunch of iterations. And then the plastic came up like, yeah, I have a team of people that my colleagues, like sort of what you were doing, you can work with us and we'll get all those things done. And
yeah.
And then more stuff happened. And I don't know. I wasn't in the mindset where you are, where you're like, this is what I'm doing and I'm here to add value. Like, I didn't have the right perspective on it after a while.
Yeah.
Blossomed into more and more. And I don't know. I foolishly began to just like, not resent, but just be like, hey, I did all this stuff already. It's like, no, man, keep going.
Mm-hmm.
It got 90% there, finish it. And, it was definitely a lesson.
Yeah. I mean, I'll admit, I've been in that position where I've been 90% of the way there and I got stressed and I, set the bridge on fire and I regret it later, I tell you.
Yeah. I think is you get stressed.
Yeah.
And you don't behave on your best behavior.
That's right.
But
that's right.
To other people and networking and because this has now changed the way I see things. And that's powerful.
Good. Cool.
I want to hear how you found your first artisans and your first designers. I guess designers came first because you already plaster.
Yeah. So when I first started out, I was pretty, it was pretty clear that I needed to be aggressive on the sales side. And as much as it made my skin crawl when I first started doing this, I started cold calling designers in New York City. And it was not my favorite thing to do, but I realized that it was actually really rewarding. And I was able to get meetings, and I was able to start getting projects. And I was really, I had some great clients right out of the gate. I mean, Robert Couturier and Bunny Williams and some people, others like that. And it was fantastic. But it was still, you can't, you don't have a career with just 2 or 3 big designers. You have to build on that. And so we're still pretty aggressive on that side. And I think that's one of the ways that I can, I really add value to the artisans that we are managing. I have a responsibility to get them more work. So we always need more clients. And again, I used to get 4x8 sheets of masonite back when they still made masonite. And I would make samples on the masonite and then rip them down on my table saw into stacks. And I would, and then we handmade in our shop, we handmade these sample boxes that were like a 2-part sleeve, and then we bound them in bookbinding cloth. I mean, we went all out on these. And I would give these out to the designers. When I would get a meeting with a designer, I'd bring these into their office. And at the end of the meeting, I would give them the box. And I calculated at one point these boxes with the samples and all the materials and time that went into making these cases and the samples and the labeling of them and everything. It was each box was probably worth about $500 to me, just in raw cost, right? And I would just give them away. I mean, go back to talking about, be generous with your samples. I mean, that was the foundation of how I built this company first from originally.
I love it, man. It's
yeah.
Yeah.
And I got 50. I remember that I finished doing that kind of like 2008 when things were really hitting the wall. I kind of stopped doing that. And by then I had put those boxes in 50 offices in Manhattan. So you do 50 times 500.
Yeah. That adds
up.
But you got to spend money to make money.
That's right.
I'm always talking about being proactive with stuff like that. I'm a big believer because I didn't for a long time. For a long time, I thought if I just do great work in a vacuum, everyone's going to come find me.
Right.
That's how the world works.
No, it's not how. No. No, but it's also taught me that that's what artisans ultimately, when you're doing your projects, you don't have time to do that stuff, right? And that's why a lot of them need help, and that's where we come in, is we help do that stuff. We spend money on advertising and marketing. We're building this new website, and it's going to feature, each artisan's going to have their own section of the website featuring their work, and it's cool. It's really cool.
It's awesome.
Because it's really hard to beat the pavement and be a full-time artisan. Really hard.
Especially when you are performing the work, right?
Yeah.
Only when I was able to get out of the field, company, was I able to make any real headway in sales and marketing, as far as getting my skills better, but being able to prioritize. Because so often you're just trying to get something done. Like I just need to and it's such a different mind space,
Yeah.
headspace to go proactively reach out to clients
Yep.
and, you know, put together proposals and work on a bunch of samples. Those things are so antithetical to getting the work done in the field.
Yep. Absolutely. And to your point, right? So like a bigger shop, they don't need me. They've gotten to that stage where they can have somebody who's dedicated doing their sales or doing their marketing or do whatever it is they're doing. But it's the smaller shops that you know. So essentially they're pooling their I become a pool of resources for them that they wouldn't have access to otherwise.
It's brilliant. And then, so okay, so now you have designers. We'll talk about how you find artists and stuff. Now,
Mm-hmm.
how does the project management look? So you make the samples,
Mm-hmm.
get them signed off on, then so you come up with pricing, and you submit the bid to the designer, and then you manage the project throughout, right?
So we actually hold the contract on every project. So which I think is important to our clients. They want the accountability to ride with us. So the artisans, right? They give me a proposal. I give the designers a proposal, and then we'll do sampling. Is often has already started or will start soon after that. And then we proceed to, if the project gets a green light, and we start working on scheduling, logistics, all kinds of things. Sometimes after all that work with the designer, I get kicked over to a GC, or sometimes it stays with the designer or the architect. It's all every project's different. And then we handle all the back and forth, and I try to only bring the only bring the artisans in when it becomes, important that they be front and center to either hear, if it's a site meeting or something like that. But I try to handle a lot of the back and forth and the minutia every day that they don't need to. Or I package it all up and give it to them, at the end of the day, and then let them respond at once. But we also use a lot of we use Slack to communicate with everybody. That's one of the things I kind of require everybody to be on Slack, so we can all keep everything in one place, and that's easy to find who said what when, and find the drawings, find the references for the samples, all that stuff.
So artisan is producing work and spending a little bit of time doing an estimate and a sample, but all the other stuff is taken care of by you.
Yeah, unless they're, it's unless it's something where they need to be, dealing with it firsthand. I'll be there with them, or I'll be on the call. Like yesterday when we had 2 back-to-back calls for discussing samples for one project with 2 different artisans. So I was on the call for, both of those. It ended up being about 2.5 hours, split between the two artisans. But I wanted them to hear firsthand from the designer, and then I would interject and kind of translate and make sure that the message was clear, not being muddied by some designers. It's different when the materials and the aesthetic, whereas a lot of the designers often know the aesthetic. They don't understand the materials. They don't understand the processes. So I was doing a little translating.
So I think most people probably get it, but we are talking about high-end to ultra-high-end residential for the
Yeah.
These are not just go to Lowe's, get their plaster, and follow what the little instructions are kind of thing.
No, this is some of we are incredibly fortunate we work in some of the highest end real estate there is. I don't say that I can probably sound like I'm bragging, and I'm certainly proud of it, but That's what I aim to be at the top end. I think that's where the most interesting work is happening. I think where its most creative designs are happening. It's where the most talented designers are working, the most talented architects are working. But yeah, we're working all over Manhattan. We just did a project in Palm Beach. We've done things in Beverly Hills and LA. But it's cool. It's very cool.
So it's safe to say there's less budget constraint.
I mean, less.
Less.
Yes, less. Yes. I mean, yes. Yes, it's less. I mean, we still, it still happens, but it's, I guess, is a matter of where the decimal point is.
But for a world of the designers are coming to you going, is this possible? Like, what is possible more than, like, how do we be less expensive? Like, how do we do this for the least amount of money is not the top priority. They care.
I mean, so there are times when we might be trying to value engineer something, right? But it's not, I mean, something, so a designer and architect might show you something and right off the bat, like, that's just going to be ridiculous, right? So so sometimes we might be trying to figure out how to do that, whatever it is, for, $100,000 rather than what it looks like it would be $1 million, But yeah, no, I mean, you're talking, six figures for something is still, that's a lot.
Yeah. But in your world, like, aesthetics.
They dominate. Yeah, for sure. For sure. People want what they want, and they want to figure out how to get it. And when you're doing things that are handmade, that's they know it's gonna be expensive. Yeah.
That's, in my experience, I agree with you. Like, that's why I love the market that we're in. There's a lot of money, but it's not like it's just that money is not the first thing limiting what can happen.
Right.
What is actually possible here? Let's go down that path and find out what that might look like.
Right.
It's opposite of, like, general, like, cost. We're getting 3 bids from Google repainting our bedroom.
Totally.
Price is the determining factor for most people in America who are having trades work done.
That's right.
But when you get to a certain level, price is not the determining factor. It's a piece of it for sure, but
it's a piece of it, yeah. But it's not the right.
Craftspeople to really push the limits of craft,
right?
In a different way. I don't want to take away from craftsmen who are repainting bedrooms for a cost-effective amount, because there's craftsmanship in doing things for less money as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
But when you take away the budget and you say, what can aesthetically be created here, that's a really fun thing for some.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out too, right? You and I, in discussing this, we're not talking about, slushy amounts of money that are, overflowing everybody's pockets, right? We're talking about doing things that cost a tremendous amount of money to produce, right? The paints that you use are the most expensive paints there are in the market. Plaster finishes of high quality are incredibly expensive. Making molds for ornamental plaster is incredibly, labor intensive. When you're like the project that how we met through the project in Boston. We made that plaster frieze. That whole thing had to be hand carved out of clay so that they could then make a mold to cast it once. That was in our contract. It can only be cast once. There can be no duplicate of it. You destroy the mold. Well, actually, we're storing the mold for them in case, fingers crossed, nothing ever happens to it, but we will be able to recast it for them. But that was all done out by hand. I haven't shared an image of that yet because the homeowner, because of COVID, has not been to their home yet. They've not been able to see it. So we're not sharing it with anybody until the homeowner sees it. So um, I will share that at some point, but I know you've seen it.
Yeah.
That costs a lot of money to do. But the artisans and myself, nobody got slushy amounts of money, right? This was just the client knew what they wanted and they were willing to pay for it. And people put in incredible hours to do that. It took us, I mean, I worked on that project for, that was a year for me, from the time that the designer approached me to the time that we installed it. It's a ton of work.
Yeah. And it's
Drawings and, we did iterations and iterations of drawings and samples and, conference calls and all kinds of stuff. But it's so thrilling when you see the photograph of it completed. You're like, that's amazing. We did that. That's so cool.
What is that process? Can we talk about that process a little bit?
Of making a frieze like that? Yeah. So you want me to start from the very beginning? So the designer approached me and they wanted a frieze. I think it's, it's somewhere 6 feet wide or 7 feet wide, 8 feet tall, something like that. And they had a kind of a motif in mind, and a lot of plant life and birds, and there's like a little stream running through it. It's got a very forced perspective. So even though it's a bas relief, but so there's probably, there's less than an inch, probably half an inch, maybe 3/4 of difference between the highest point and the lowest point, but it creates the illusion of being, 100 feet of visual space. And it's all one color. It's not even painted in color. It's all white. So we did drawings. We worked off the architectural drawings, so we know the exact space. We have to coordinate with the mill worker, so we know how it's going to be installed. It's because it's going to get trimmed out into permanently installed in the wall. We start doing drawings. We're doing full-size drawings, so those are going back and forth in tubes to Boston, and then once we had an approved drawing, we set up a panel in the studio, and they start carving it in clay, modeling clay. It's all done by hand, and then we would do weekly. We were doing weekly. This was actually before COVID, so we were doing just regular FaceTime weekly meetings in the studio. So we would hold, had you're holding your phone up and showing them the different details and anything they wanted to change. You just, the artisan would go in and wipe out the clay and start again. I did that. So that was carved by Hyde Park Moldings. It's one of my fantastic collaborative partners. We do a ton of work together, and they're incredibly talented. And then once we had a finished model, we present that to the client. The client approved it. We make a mold, cast it, and we cast it in one piece and shipped it up, and then they installed it. Hyde Park installed it, and then we finished it. And I just think they just got a nice soft lime paint on it. But it's that whole process was a year, and unfortunately the client has yet to see it. That was I think we installed it in August.
It's crazy. The poor guys who were installing that, man. That's got to be nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I mean they're experts. They know exactly what they're doing. They're highly skilled, those guys. And they didn't finish. They finished it after they installed it. So at least if it got a little scratch or a nick, they could fix it, and then do the lime paint afterwards.
And cast it in a some sort of casting plaster, or like a plaster for casting?
Yeah. So what do they use for that? They probably use something like a hydrocal, which is what so I don't know if anybody's looking at some of the stuff on our Instagram. There were some freezes from years ago for Robert Couturier, which I did in my studio back. This was when I still had my studio, so I think we did those in 2007, and we did all the carving in wax and made molds using polyurethane molds, and then cast in hydrocal, which is really, really hard plaster.
It's great.
Cool stuff. Very cool stuff.
Very cool stuff.
Don't cast your hand in it though. It sets off really, really with a lot of heat.
So you do, and it's bas relief, not bas.
Yeah, that's right. Bas relief. Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Can't be bas.
You can't say bas relief. Yeah.
I read it and I heard it said before, so.
Oh, okay.
Glad that.
There you go.
Not make a fool of myself someplace.
Don't worry about it.
Okay, so what other, like, the plaster, someone said something earlier about the fluted walls. Those, you have a picture of these like 3D, pretty deep fluted walls. What goes into a process like that? And somebody said it's very expensive. Is that right?
Yeah, it can. Yeah, it's one of, it's an expensive element. It depends on what you're doing. So if I'm not sure which image they're looking at. If it was the Kips Bay, do you think we did those, it was a small room with a kind of a geometric flute, kind of a slight, almost trapezoidal shaped flute with a radius cove where the flute went up through the radius cove, and then it terminated at just a little 3/4 round piece of trim. What makes a project like that expensive is the radius cove, because you have to take the flute design and turn it into a radius. So you then have to carve flutes that are exactly perfect to the panel that's going to go on the wall that's just straight. So that you can bench run, right? You make a knife and you run it on a horse on a table with a straight edge. You make them 16 inches wide. That's not crazy time intensive, but to make it into a radius cove takes a lot of work. And then you carve it, you make a mold, and then you have to cast each one of these pieces, and then that gets set in, and then you can do your miters in your corners when you install it. That the installation has a lot of challenges, because you don't, the dimensions of the room, you don't want flutes hitting the corner differently on each corner. You want to make sure all the corners look the same. You want to make sure your flutes are hitting your cornice perfectly. You got to close up all the joints. You got to make it look all nice. And then again, we used a lime paint. I love lime paint over cast plaster. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful look. It's a really soft, the light just kind of just hits it so softly, and it has a little bit of kind of radiance to it, but it's just a soft, low sheen effect. It's really, really beautiful.
What's your favorite lime paint
brand? You got to ask. Let's get Patrick on here. You should talk to Patrick someday. Get Patrick on here. He would tell you all that. I think I know he's using Limeworks a lot.
And that's NYC Decorative Arts?
NYC Decorative Arts, yep.
So,
yep.
Talk to me about how you brought on your artisan.
So Patrick was from NYC Decorative Arts, was the first artisan that I was managing as more of a kind of management representation model, where I was using his name. He had approached me looking. He wanted to get onto some of my projects. He was looking for work, and we just started talking, and we started working together. He started some small projects, and we started doing bigger projects with him, and eventually I realized that he had the chops to, really take on bigger projects. Was still at that time working primarily with another studio. They were doing all my kind of more large, complex projects. I walked Patrick in, and as I saw how he handled himself and how much he cared about his work and had skills, I decided to make this leap with him. And we've had, we've had just so much success together. It's really exciting. I mean, I don't know, I have this one moment that I just feel makes me feel so good about what I do. I mean, I remember I got him a really, the first really huge job, and I secured it 2 days before his first child was born. And I knew, having been a recent father myself at that time, I knew what that meant to him. And it just made I still carry that around as just this moment of that. Means if I could just have moments like that more often, it would be really make my life so wonderful.
So you went from him to, what was the next? Who was your artisan? How did that? So you
so we have Metamorpho, who's Sylvie Bilger. She's but Metamorpho is her Instagram handle. She's an incredibly talented decorative painter. She's from France. She started out young working in France. She was trained at Versailles doing restoration work at Versailles, and then she came to the U.S. and she's been here ever since, and she's wonderful. I always love bringing her onto projects because she's such a lovely, warm personality with that amazing French accent. They melt for her. It's a nice thing to watch. And we have David Faust, who's another incredibly talented painter. He does decorative painting. He's also a fantastic muralist. You can see his. Some of these. Both of those artisans would also have work on my Instagram. You'll be able to find them through that. David's also a fine art painter, as is Patrick. But David does incredible murals, really wonderful stuff. And then Lisa Stimson, who I mentioned earlier, is an Aigle artisan, and then who will be coming on soon. And then we have some people who will be coming soon. We have on the website. There's going to be a few spots for some up and coming people. It'll be exciting to share.
So if somebody wants to be an artisan and work with you,
mm-hmm.
How do they go about doing that?
Reach out. I mean, I love talking to artisans, even if it isn't a good fit. I like giving advice. I like helping. And if somebody is a good fit, I feel like it's a process. You want to get to know somebody and get to know them personally. I think it's very important that I get along with the artisan personally, and I feel that they have, that they're a good person, and that they're going to stand by, stand by their word, and that they really care about what they do. And so it's a process of getting to know them. But if it's somebody who's young and doesn't have much work and they want to jump on projects with other, with say with Sylvie or David, or go work with help Lisa or work with Patrick or do stuff with Hyde Park or whatever, we can certainly help in that regard. And that's a great way to kind of vet young new artisans, see how they fit in with these other people, and if that works, then maybe we start trying to get them work of their own. If they're a little more established, then I like, just show me what do you have, what do you do, I'm always looking for people. I don't like to bring on people who are going to compete with the people that I'm currently managing, right? So not really looking for, at least not in New York. I'm not looking for another plaster finisher. But if you're in LA, I'm looking to expand in that. We've done a number of projects out there, but we could be doing a lot more if we had somebody out there local. And I'm always looking for new things. I mean, there's so many things out there that people do that we don't currently have. And I know that my clients will respond well to talent. And part of what I like about what I do is that I'm expanding. I hope I am, and expanding the appreciation for artisan trades, and that. I know, there are a lot of designers that do appreciate it already, but I want that to stay healthy and get stronger and stronger. I think a lot of artisan trades start losing their edge in the marketplace in the 90s, as I think some of the marketplace, was going in other directions, and it's come back, and it's pretty healthy right now, but I really wanted to get even stronger. And because I think, like you said, these clients who have the budget for it are willing to spend the money to support it, and we should encourage that and let them do it. Let them have the great stuff. They are helping to support people who want to be creative and want to work with their hands, and that's not easy.
Yeah, and it's awesome that they exist, because they empower craftspeople to push the limit of what they can do. Right?
They create opportunities for us all to do what we want to do to the highest level that we can do it.
Yeah.
Right.
What about Glosswork? You guys do some high gloss stuff.
We do. Yeah. We do. Patrick does that too. He's been doing the high we do the fine paints of Europe, hand brushed. He pretty much does it all hand brushed. So we've been watching some of your videos, and we're very inspired by we've been talking about bringing out the sprayer maybe for some of the underlayers. But I love the having the faintest sense of the hand showing up in there. That gets me. I like, I know you don't want it to be brushy or streaky in any sense, but just that you see something in there. That's where you see that hand in there. It's nice.
It is. And sometimes we just finished a project where they wanted brush strokes.
Yeah.
Old world. It had a whole story to the house, and
sure.
I wanted a traditional brush finish like you would see if you traveled Europe. And
yeah.
That's
great.
It took many rounds of samples to brush strokes, because we've been
get it just right. Yeah. Yeah.
Been trained to take the brush strokes out and make them.
Yeah, I think, it's funny you say that, because I have a good friend of mine who, he had a new kitchen done, and he had some new cabinets put in, and he was feeling like, oh, these, I don't know, these look a little too new. And I said, just tell your painter, put some brush stroke, let the brush strokes, lay it on thick, put it, and it just gave it that little, made him not look brand new, gave him a little something to look at. Looked beautiful. Wasn't in high gloss. I think, it was kind of like an eggshell, or some satin finish, but looked really nice.
It does. I like the brush stuff.
Yeah.
Artisans and artists can be finicky, right? They're passionate, creative people.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about like managing the super talented artist. What is that like? Someone asked a question about let's talk about that first. But I mentioned the morale, like managing morale on a job, right? Because obstacles get in your way, things don't go the way you want. You're probably in there coaching as much as managing the project.
Yeah, I mean, that's another one of those things that comes with experience, right? That you, like our earlier conversation around the sample process, learning to be patient and know that it's part of the process, right? Some projects are not going to go well. And also knowing when to push back and when it's okay to push back and say, no, I'm not going into that. I'm not doing my work in that room until every other trade is done, right? And knowing and having the confidence to, push back on some, GC who's angry and behind schedule himself, and he's, barking at you you got to get in there. I need it. And you got to be able to say, well, if I start this now, it's not going to go well. But if I start it in 2 weeks, when you're done with all you have to do, we're going to do a better job and we'll still meet the timeline. And that's not always easy to do. And also, and so, yeah, sure. An artisan who's gotten to a job site, got all his tools there, got all his stuff there. Suddenly somebody comes along and says, we got to cut a hole in that wall. The electrician forgot to run a cable, or, who knows what. And the artisan rightfully is upset. And yeah, you got to talk them down and just say, look, it's, let's go back to the studio and go make lots of samples, and we'll use those to find more projects. So this won't matter to you as much in the future. That's the thing, when you're busy and something like that happens, you go, fine, I needed these guys over, the other side of town anyway, so we'll be back in a week. But it's hard to recognize that when you're young and starting out.
I have some artisans on my team, and you have to. They're humans, like anybody. All humans. Like as boss, like my job is to manage them.
Yeah.
And hey, calm down. We got this.
Yeah.
This is what we thought it was going to be, but I find myself doing a fair amount of that. But that's my job, like yours, is to facilitate greatness in people.
That's an excellent way to phrase that. To facilitate greatness in people.
And right. Super talented people at the craft sometimes need that.
Yep. Yeah.
To maximize and to keep the stress levels down. Could they get the work done? I'm sure they could get the work done. But it keeps things moving smoother to have somebody that gets them, right? That gets the craft to manage from above.
Yep.
And in my company, that's my job. And for you, it's with the other artisans.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm very, I'm pretty careful in my, my vetting process, and I need to know that somebody's going to be, I don't expect everybody to be, easy peasy all the time to work with, but you can't be a jerk. It's just not going to work. It's just not going to work. I don't have the time. I don't have the energy to deal with that. And I don't want the risk of you, flaring up in front of somebody, it just won't work. So that is not that's not one of my bigger issues that I have to deal with. Sometimes getting artisans to get me everything I need on the timeline that we had previously discussed, that sometimes comes up. And so sometimes I'm chasing people around, reminding them that they owe a sample to this person and that person, or a proposal to me for this or that. But for the most part, we've had some rough characters come through, but they go out the back door. They just don't. It just doesn't last.
So I experience this a lot. My job is to tell guys when it's good enough and when it's time to stop.
Yeah.
Is that something that you have to do as well? Any high level meticulous craftsperson gets in the zone.
Yeah, sure.
Narrow lens and wants perfect. And oftentimes my job is, nope, good. Or it's time to stop. Do you ever?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the times what we're doing we've distilled it down to a bit of a formula before we get on site, in the sample making process. I'm probably a little bit like that person that you're describing myself. So I probably am right there alongside going, yeah, right. What can we do to but yes, at times we do, say, all right, you know what, they don't want us in here anymore. They don't want us making dust. They don't want us, they've got to get the furniture in here, or they've got something else going on. But I'm probably I can be a bit of a perfectionist myself. Yeah.
They're going to lay carpet down. They're going to put art on the walls. They're going to put in this place.
Yeah.
And so right now, everything is masked off and all we see is the walls. But that's not the case later.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And, you have to be careful of some traps too, where you say, in a hand-done product, there's always inherently going to be something that's shows you that it's handmade, and that's okay. I think that part has to be okay. And the risk is that you get into this vicious cycle where you're like, oh, I don't like that little thing over there, and you redo it. Now there's a little thing over here. And you redo it. Now there's a little thing over here. And you redo it. It's like you're never gonna. There's always gonna be something. So, let it go.
So I get that with plaster. I'm not an expert, but for me, the one thing with gloss is you could do everything, and then you do that final coat, and something goes wrong. It's not a one-day fix.
No.
Right? Oh, wait, we have to listen to. So we struggle with scheduling gloss projects because you don't know. We have a schedule right now on a project. We're doing a bunch of gloss walls. We have a good idea of where we're going to be at.
Right.
But we may put that final coat of primer on and see that we need another round of putty.
Yeah.
We may put that final coat of gloss on and a piece of dust hits right at eye level, right at the most prominent spot.
Yeah.
Or you get a sag. Or that's where, to me, gloss is the hardest thing that we do, because there's a whole domino effect.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I'd say that you're that is one of the hardest things to do. It's full of risk, right? It's full of risk. Yeah. You're so dependent on those walls being in good shape, and then you get that first coat of gloss on there and you go, oh man, this what looked and felt, even like to your hand, felt like a perfectly flat wall, has all kinds of things in it. It's not just a little patch, little nail thing here. It's, you got to get the big trowel out and bridge these two ripples in the wall. You know, there's a tape seam here and here. We got to create a bridge between the two of them.
It's definitely, it makes for, we try to reduce the, keep the risk low, but it does make a bit of a stressful situation when I have a gloss project that has to get done by the 22nd, that we got to get the team to it. Well, you know, if everything goes well in the project that we're on now, we're good.
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what I'm, you know, we stay up at night thinking about.
Yep. Absolutely.
So you mentioned that you work in LA and in Florida. How does work for you? What does that look like for a project?
I mean, travel's fine. I mean, it doesn't happen a lot because it's expensive, right? We basically just say to the client, whatever the price for the product is the same, but the travel expenses are getting passed through to you 100%. We don't mark it up. There's no markup. There's nothing but whatever the airfare, the hotel, car, a per diem for the guys, all that stuff, that's going to be on the final invoice. Back it up by receipts if you want, but it's and it can add a lot. Some people they're okay with that. They want what they want. Some people it's a deal breaker. But and in some cases I've worked with teams that are local. I had a team in LA for a while that we were working with out there. And I've also flown people to LA. It depends. I mean,
we'll figure out Boston.
Yeah, Boston. Boston's great. Boston was
there.
Sorry?
Have you done a lot of work up there?
I've done some. You know, when I started out, one of my early clients was the Giorgio Armani store on Newbury Street. I used to. That was maybe that was like my first or second client, and I would go in there, you know, come in at close and leave at 3 in the morning. Do it again the next day. And I've done a handful of work in Boston, and as well as that new project, which was really great. So hopefully we'll be doing more. We should work together. We should get together on some.
You have a gloss guy in Boston now.
Excellent. I love that. That's excellent.
And we have decorative artists that I'll put you in contact with. There's some people that I think you would like to talk to.
Good.
It would be a mutually beneficial arrangement.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, we have a few questions that we ask at the end of the podcast.
Okay.
The first question is, I need a DIY decorative plaster tip. If I'm a homeowner and I want to do a plaster wall, what would you tell me?
Oof.
Other than keep your expectations low.
I would say think about going with a lime paint instead of a lime plaster. If you like depending on what you like, if you like something that's less modeled or, you know, almost monochrome, but has a nice authentic look of something old world and plastery and textural, the lime paint is a much more forgiving, less labor intensive application, and it can look really beautiful.
Awesome.
That's nice. Yeah.
That's it. That's a great. recently did a lime paint project for a designer.
You did? Yeah.
And you're right. It's you know you couldn't.
Yeah, I love the lime paint that, the one of the thing you have to be careful, and I'm sure you see this a lot in your world, existing orange peel on a wall or anything can really set you back, and that's one of the potential problems with the lime paint. If you just go over an existing wall, that texture might flash through. But I love using lime on. We're doing a lot of it on top of troweled plasters, where we'll do 2 coats of Marmarino or something like that, or Calcera, and then use lime paint on top of it, and then knock through and reveal some of the plaster underneath. Or we use the lime over the ornamental plaster, like in the case of that frieze, or the fluted walls that we did at Kips Bay for Sarah Bartholomew was the designer for that. I think lime paint we've done it on exteriors. We've done some brick homes that we've done a lime paint exterior on. It's wonderful stuff. Really great stuff.
Have you ever the Japanese plaster called
Shikui? Yeah. It's so they have a number of different plasters in Japan. A lot of them are similar in some ways to the European plasters. They'll use like kelp in some of the plasters. They will use calcium. So they use a lot of, one of the manufacturers uses eggshells, tons and tons of eggshells in addition to the lime plaster. And they use, I think it's diatomaceous earth, I think. Is that right? It's like the exoskeletons of microorganisms, and I think is what that stuff is. They make a trowel plaster, and a lot of those Japanese plasters can be used on an exterior, similar to a Tadlac, like a Moroccan plaster.
And it absorbs CO2. Is that right? Something like
Yeah,
that.
I think that, a lot of like the lime plasters will absorb. Yeah, they absorb CO2. They absorb a lot of times if you do an unsealed plaster, especially if it's a really thick application, it acts as a natural air conditioner. It'll pull humidity out of the air, and then as the air dries, it will release it back in. So it creates some stabilization to temperature. And I mean, you're talking about really old traditional uses. I mean, it doesn't really work when it's over, gypsum wallboard. But that was part of the reason that it was so appealing to people many, 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 many years ago, as you had all these other properties that it was doing. It's lime is naturally repellent to insects and bacteria and things like that. So you create a healthy environment just by using these natural plasters.
Beats the pants out of well, I'm not gonna say it. And I've heard you say that a number of times. I don't know a lot about the plaster world. There's so many of these fancy names, right? They're all foreign, American invented plasters.
Yeah. What was the term? What's the word? You lost you for a second there. Tadlac. Yeah, so Tadlac is a traditional Moroccan plaster, and they would use it on the exteriors of buildings. They would use it on floors, walls, interiors. They would use it in the baths, in the sinks, on the floor of the bathroom. We're doing it now more and more, and it's becoming more and more popular to do a shower in a Tadlac instead of tile, so you get a monolithic feel of everything being one continuous surface. It's nice, and you set the bathroom up like you would for a tile application, and instead of using tile, you use a lime plaster. You have to have all the waterproofing in place and all that stuff. But it's beautiful stuff, really beautiful.
I recently saw a GC that was doing like a whole bathroom in it.
Yep. We just did one in Narragansett. We didn't do the floor, but we did all the walls, the whole bathroom, all the shower, all the walls, everything. Cool.
It becomes encompassing space.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, just lime plaster just has this beautiful. It's just something about it. It just has this, that just this tactile feel and look and aura about it. It just feels so nice to be enveloped by it. Yeah, it's a pretty cool project. That I haven't seen it entirely finished because they still hadn't put in the fixtures or the floor when I was there last. But it's cool, very cool.
Awesome. So now, what is your favorite piece of painting, plastering paraphernalia, like tool, piece of equipment, product, you name it?
Oof. That's a tough one. I don't know. I mean, we're having so much fun right now doing the fluted plaster walls and then applying lime finishes on them. And so that's a very, casting process. But I also mentioned how Hyde Park fabricates the flutes on the bench. So they cut a knife and they run it on a bench. If you've never watched somebody produce a plaster molding or a plaster panel that's bench run, it's so cool to watch. I mean, they make something that's very three-dimensional out of, they're taking liquid out of a bucket and then setting up as they're doing it. They're doing layer after layer after layer until they get it just into this beautiful shape. So as far as a process or something that interests me a lot right now, that's something that I love watching that happen.
Then they come all the panels and they like blend the seams.
Yeah.
And
so they lay down a little bit of plaster on the table, and it's a non-adhesive surface, right? And then they lay down burlap, and then they run this thing back and forth, adding more plaster, piling the plaster in front of it, and back and forth until it's a form, and then it gets hard enough that they can pop it off the table. You can put a hole in one end and hang it from a hook so it can cure, and do that 100 times, and then you can you install these, and then you point them like you would point bricks, but you make it perfect, and you use the same material, and it becomes monolithic. And then we come in and apply finishes to it. And depending on the contour of the flute, we can do. If it's highly, detailed or articulated, we might only do a lime paint on it. But if it has something that's a softer and doesn't have lots of tight corners, we can do a polished plaster on it. And we're going to do one this month where it's a nice rounded flute, and that does have a radius cove on the ceiling also. But that's going to be beautiful. That's in one of those new super talls on the new 57th Street area of Manhattan, with all these super tall buildings going up there.
Working in those things is crazy, huh?
Crazy. I don't know if I posted a picture of it. You see the clouds, and you feel like the cloud. You're looking eye to eye with the clouds. It's pretty intense. It's cool. Very cool.
All right. Final question.
I lost you there. I lost you for a second. Come back.
That part is the final question that we ask everyone that comes on the show.
Okay.
It's obvious that you are an expert at what you do. You're at the highest level there is, but now we need to bring you back down to earth, and we want to hear like the most embarrassing, worst horror story you can possibly stomach telling us. If you've been doing this for as long as you've been doing this, I painted the wrong house one time. We've pretty unbelievable horror stories. So do you have something for us?
Oh, let me think about that. I mean, I think I don't know if I have anything that makes me cringe from an perspective of something that where I was working on the project and it was something that went wrong with the project, right? I've had things go wrong. I mean, I've had, we did a polished Venetian plaster once in this apartment on Lower Fifth Avenue, and the guy installing the TV in the master bedroom was putting his bolts in the wall, and the bolts came through until on the living room side, and we had to redo this whole wall. That wasn't really my, the things like that the things that make me cringe are the things that I think when I was young and naive and new to the business and scared at times about getting taken advantage of, or was I not going to get paid, and just not knowing that the industry was actually 99.9% full of really good people. And so the things that make me cringe would probably be some of my, there's a handful of these early interactions maybe where I just really, I set the bridge on fire, and it was just, it was dumb, like really set it on fire, and I've been really fortunate to come back and work with some of those people again. But there's a couple that they had it. They were like, nope, never again. But I learned a lesson really that is etched in my brain, man.
Can you tell me one of the horror stories?
I mean, there was there was a miscalculation in square footage, because there was a bit of a rush job with this one client. They wanted to meet. It was a project in Florida, and we got to get you started. We got to get you started here. Quote us this project from photographs, And I said, okay, but this is gonna be a guess, and the final bill is going to represent the actual square footage, and that created a little tension at the end of the project. And I, in my youth and anxiety and all that stuff, I hit I went kind of berserk, and I mean, I had other, I had other people to pay, and there was a whole, this was like a cascading thing, and that's like really freaked me out. And yeah, I lost my cool, lost my cool, and that was a harsh lesson, but that was a really important lesson, and I still care. I mean, it still sometimes it shakes me still when I think about how dumb and naive I was. And I had this young artisan who was working. I started representing her. This was a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and I saw some of myself in her, and I thought, like I can coach that out of her, and that it didn't really work. And she was, I think another lesson is that people show you their cards early on, right? And if you choose to ignore those cards, you do it at your own peril. The cards that they're showing you, those are the cards they're going to play. So that's another lesson. And that one was only 2 years ago. But I think I thought, I see some of myself in her. I can save her from the pitfalls that and no, she was just jumping right into those same pitfalls. And I'm like, no, don't do it. And she's just charging ahead. And I was like, this is not going to work. Not going to work. So. I think hopefully she's found footing elsewhere.
Some of us have to make the mistake the hard way. Sometimes some of us can learn. I think when you get older, it's easy to learn from other people's mistakes.
Uh-huh.
You sometimes have to make them yourself.
I tell my son all the time, I say, sometimes we learn the most from our failures. Don't be afraid to fail. I always say, if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. And apps don't let failure just, wreck you. You learn from it. Failures teach you often way more than your successes do.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, Jonas, thanks so much for being here. Thank you for
My pleasure. This is so cool. This was really, really fun. I really appreciate you bringing me on, and it's been a pleasure to get to know you. We've had a number of great conversations. I think we're very kind of like-minded people in the industry. It's always nice to connect with people like you.
I agree. We will. We're going to stay in touch, and we're going to work together again.
I love it.
I know it.
I'm trying to read. I haven't been able to read any of these comments. I'm hoping that I'll have to go through and try to do some of that.
Here after we end this. But,
okay.
I tried to, anything that was relevant to what we were talking about, I tried to bring up.
Great. Well, I hope people will feel comfortable, reaching out to me. They can always message me right on Instagram through the Superstrata USA, or come on the website and send me an email. I get the emails for the info at superstratausa.com.
Awesome.
Cool. Zach, what a pleasure.
Yeah, this has been great.
This is awesome.
I look forward to more of your crazy posts about these unsustained projects you're working on.
Yeah, we have some good ones. We have some good ones coming up. We're doing 5 floors of unbroken fluted panel from the first floor to the top of the 5th floor in a stairway. Yeah, we'll see. We'll get to post it, and it'll be a while, but it's something. We'll get something out of that.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's gonna be so cool. It's gonna be so cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Excellent.
Talk soon.
Thanks, Zach. Have a great night.